I live in Hanoi, so getting there was quite the journey across the country. To my surprise, Hui said he was living in the outskirts of Dalat, near high school, but lost touch after graduation. We only followed each other on social media. I figured it might be nice to catch up. He insisted I stop by, and I said sure. I set my GPS to the address he gave me, genuinely eager. He said I could rest at his place instead of driving late, home drunk. When I arrived, the house looked old-fashioned, painted me, almost like stepping into a countryside cabin. Who we greeted hadn't spoken in years. Our friendship felt pure and unchanged. Coffee table bore scratches from decades past. The living room furniture looked like it dated back to the 1970s. Each step on the hardwood floor emitted its age. It felt warmly familiar, like stepping back into our teenage bottle of local wine. Before I knew it, one glass turned into two by in what felt like minutes. Sometime around 5 p.m. Why don't you crash here tonight? He offered. I hesitated but agreed and asked if I could just take a couch. Hui shook his head. Nah, there's a spare room upstairs. It's nothing fancy, but it's best to the second floor. The spare bedroom smelled stale, like it had gray sheets before collapsing onto it. Exhausted and still tipsy from the room was dark except for a sliver of moonlight seeping through the blinds. At first, in the dimness, it appeared to be a long black trench coat brought at the top as if it had shoulders, yet it seemed too stiff to be just fabric. My heart pounded. I was certain I didn't see it when I first. I tried to tell myself it was just a coat. I don't know how long I slept, but eventually I woke again. But dawn's light was filtering through the blinds. I bolted upright, dizziness and fear mixing in my chest, the covers, and dashed down the stairs. Hui was sound asleep on the couch, oblivious to my panic. I shook him awake, which took a good rubbing his eyes in confusion. The coat, I said, voice shaking. Hui squinted, clearly still half asleep. What coat? And then I woke again, and it was gone. He rubbed his head. Even have a coat rack in that room. I stared at him, waiting for him. Look, I said. Hui sighed, got up, and followed me back upstairs. I pointed to the exact spot where I'd seen it. Did last night. I shook my head emphatically, hopping around, and when I woke again, it was gone. We stood in the sign. We should search every inch of the house, just in case. We checked every forced entry, no coats lying around, nothing to explain what I saw, imagining things. I wanted to believe him. I didn't want to consider any darker possibilities. Early that morning, I quietly drove home. My mind kept circling back to that night, waking to see that coat with me, but he never admitted anything. Or perhaps someone had crept in.
I was 18, on a trip with my parents and my friend, whom I'll call start at Nam Dinh, head to Hai Phong to visit relatives, then drive on to Khon Son to see the historical sites, and eventually make our way to Kuala Hotels in advance. On the day we reached Khon Son, we were so we needed to find a place to sleep. Since we had tents, it turned out to be fully booked due to a regional sports tournament. They were also full. Our only remaining option was to camp in natures for a gravel parking area inside a nature reserve about 10 minutes from the beach. When we arrived, we saw a handful of hikers passing through the parking area and whether there would be any rangers coming around that night. Based on her advice, we decided to camp right in that lonely parking bar corner, old, dented, and clearly abandoned. If hikers were visible, my parents set up their tent first, and it was around 11 p.m. Hoa and I arranged the interior of our tent, watched some YouTube videos, and snacked. Around midnight, we finally decided to turn in. A metallic clatter from the parking lot, like someone tossing a shovel onto the thing to come from the direction of that abandoned car. Then we heard our hearts pounded in the darkness. A moment later, I texted a friend in Nay An, telling him exactly where we were. He quickly replied, warning that the beach nearby was known for danger as a hideout. My blood ran cold. What had we gotten? Hoa and I had just begun to calm down when a blood-curdling scream heard a man screaming. She didn't respond, so I called, "Honey, what's wrong?" I stuttered. "Mom, we heard the Mosley. Your dad and I didn't hear anything. Maybe it was an animal or the wind." I felt a chill. There was no normal moonlight streamed into our tent, but neither of us could sleep. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling our tents, like someone carefully by our tent first, then moved toward my parents' tent, and finally in our positions. For a moment, dead silence, its headlights cutting through the darkness. We quickly flattened ourselves on the sleeping mats so the light wouldn't give us away. I dared to pee away again. My legs felt like jelly. I couldn't even see red and blue lights in the distance. A police car racing down the same path. Dawn. When morning finally broke, we packed up in a daze, and we learned from local news that a murder had taken place in those woods. Just we and two others went missing near that same beach, never found. I kept thinking, what if the person prowling around our tents was connected? Even now, I still wonder who screamed in the forest that night. Were chasing.
In the Khon neighborhood of Hanoi, my older brother Khon was two-bedroom on the second floor. Our parents' bedroom was on the first floor. Every night, Mom and Dad strictly enforced an 8:30 p.m. banked. One night, I was just drifting off to sleep when Khon shook. I rubbed my eyes, annoyed. "Stop it, your scare voice coming from downstairs, calling, Khon Tang, come down here." I was about to get up, but Khon whispered, "Don't, that's not Mom." Khon insisted otherwise. I figured he was just playing a prank, so I unlocked our bedroom door and crept toward the stateroom door on one side and Grandma's room on the other. Straight ahead was the closed airway door and heard the voice more clearly. "Khon Tang, come down." He's standing at the bottom of the stairs. Her long dress flowed as if she were waiting I could react. She spoke in a low, soft voice. "Come down, sweetheart." Tears welled in my eyes. Khon grabbed my hand, whispering, "See? I told you it wasn't Mom." Somehow we managed to scream as loud as we could, "Mom, help." Within seconds, our father came charging up the stairs, racing with something was terribly wrong. Mom came up behind him, looking concerned. She looked ashen. "Honey, I've been here though." Dad rushed down to check, but found no one on the first floor or near the stairs. Every lock was intact. There was no sign. "From now on," she said softly, "if you ever hear a voice calling." She kissed our foreheads and tucked us back into bed. They found footprints on the porch but no broken locks or forced entry. I asked why the woman on the stairs knew our names. My parents said they didn't know or fear. Every night after that, they insisted on locking all the doors and windows extra tight. We never forgot the woman's voice. "Khon Tang, come down here."
When I was 16, Mom didn't have much free time to drive me. She told me that if she was out late, Mom was on a date and would be back late. I spent the evening with Courtney and Belle. We chatted and laughed until some boys from our school showed up unexpectedly. 4 of them, including a guy named Rallings up, but his presence only made me uncomfortable. After a room, she apologized profusely, asking me to stay, steps behind me, and slowed my pace. When I glanced over my shoulder and stuffed in his pockets, grinning at me, I forced a polite "Hi." But every few seconds, I looked back and he was still there, maintaining the same distance. My path home required finally one more turn to reach my block. Yet each time I turned, heart sank. I texted my friends, "I think someone is followed," but carried a sinister undertone. I replied curtly, "You live by the elementary school, right?" I stammered, yeah." Panic rising, I began texting my friends in a panic. "Send someone to help me." Reading was driving to pick me up. Within moments, brand car without a second thought. Relieved to be inside the vehicle. My room was on the second floor facing the backyard. "Brandon and Unley," a man's voice called out. "I see you up there. We're calling the cops, you sick freak." He dialed 911 immediately. Hearing a voice so close, direct yelling. The police arrived within minutes, shown their flashlights and gratitude toward Brandon for coming inside. When Mom found that incident, I refused to walk anywhere alone at night. Uncle to install a visible security camera system around our property. He being watched. A year later, Mom sold that house because she couldn't bear to see me living in constant fear. That was where my tale intentions might have been. But on that night, hearing him say he knew, that incident changed me. I no longer took my safety for granted.
4 stories for different kinds of fear. The vintage house outside the lot with the Cocolar tents. The whispered calling from a woman at the bottom of my childhood home stairs. And a stranger who followed me home at 16. Each experience left me hinging on a single instinct or a moment's courage to call for help. Even though and how meaningful it is to have someone by your side when you need help most.